Redditors, what was the big rumor in your high school that turned out to be true? So, there was an 18-year-old freshman who was pregnant, and there was a joke spreading around that that was her fourth kid. They said she was pregnant at 12 years old, and that was why she never finished ninth grade. I actually made friends with her because we both walked the mile in PE, and I felt bad that people were spreading this rumor and making fun of somebody who obviously is trying to better themselves for their baby. Well, turns out, it was actually her fifth kid. She had one set of twins at the age of 13. Then at 14, she was trying to be a mother of two and finish ninth grade, but she got pregnant again and dropped out. I realize now that the entire situation was very concerning, and I hope she got some guidance. Story number 2. Not nearly as exciting as some of the replies, but at my old high school, I was always told that if you go to school after dark, in certain conditions, you would see a bunch of swastikas painted on the brick walls of the building. I thought it was fake because if they're really painted on there, why can't you see them at all times? And one night, I stayed late for an art club meeting. We were studying the photo exposure and playing with some light tubes and making cool pictures, so we were having the meeting outside in the dark. As we were messing around, I approached the building from a certain angle, and I saw them. I don't know if it was spray paint that got scrubbed off and left some kind of residue or chemical in the bricks, or if someone sprayed them with clear coat or something, but they were obviously swastikas on the wall. Story number 3, that there was an orgy several weekends involving a dozen students and at least a dozen adults. Age of consent way back then was 16. A bunch of the cool kids spent a lot of the summer at the lake cabin somebody's parents owned. The lake house next door was owned by a couple who would host swinging weekends there. At some point, the two groups started hanging out together because high school kids love free alcohol, and eventually, the students started staying for the orgies. That rumor blew up my entire senior year, and the longer it went, the more it got obvious that something had happened. Then it was obvious what had happened. This was back in the late 1980s with the AIDS scare and anti-gay paranoia. The whole story came out in a drunken argument by two of the girls involved, and the reason it had been kept secret for so long was that everyone involved had hooked up with the same sex at some point. Story number 4, that I was hacking into the computer systems. Because of this, my only failing grade my senior year was ironically the computer courses. To be clear, I was failed. I did not fail. I got perfect scores on everything in that class. I was a student tech at my school, so I had admin access to everything. This is why she thought I was hacking. The teacher simply marked my grades as 0 for that class, and I got a 0 in that class. So, the day after school technically ended, I logged into the system under admin login and changed my grades back to what they were. I had all of the papers still showing, and I got perfect scores in case there was a fight. There never was. Story number 5. For years, there was a rumor of a secret room in the gyms that had a pool table in it. It was one of the first things you learned about the school, and despite many lies told by pupils seeking short-lived glory, it was strenuously denied by staff at the school. About 5 years after I left the school, it was demolished. The school was, during my time, the second lowest Ofsted-ranked school in the country, and had a Channel 4 documentary filmed about its staff who dealt with the hardest kids to teach. Its demise was not a shock. They stopped intake of new pupils and ran down the clock on those still there, but due to some delays, the handover from school site to the new building developers, a small retirement village and health center, the janitorial staff were kept on to keep the place safe and secure over a 2 or 3 month period. On their last couple of days, they did a full site-wide inspection, and someone decided to take photos along the way. They went into all of the buildings, large or minor, and into staff areas seldom seen by students but not controversial. The photos documented the areas of the school that have begun to be disused and abandoned in its final few years, already damaged or graffiti strewn, old furniture piled in that classroom we did year 8 IT in, the untuned piano in the hallway that's already been sold off or given away, who knows. A couple of years later, one of the people who went on this mystery tour uploaded the full set to a now deleted Facebook profile. For those who attended the school in its final years, it was interesting to see what had become of the place we spent 5 years becoming young adults in, seeing perspectives from angles new to us, such as up on the roofs of the single-story outbuildings. And in the last couple of photos, a tour into the dark, dank boiler room that served both of the equally ancient gyms, and almost at the very end, a photo of those janitorial staff playing a game of pool. Story number 6. So, there was a rumor going around that a teacher was a real creep and had been saying things to some female students that made them really uncomfortable. I had a class with this teacher, and he always gave me uncomfortable vibes. A few girls had even claimed that they saw him looking at their chests, but no one could really prove anything. One day in the middle of class, we got a knock at the door and 3 sheriff deputies enter the room and tell everyone to remain calm and then inform our teacher that they have a warrant out for his arrest. They place him in handcuffs and take him out of the room. Apparently, he had been making very sexual advances towards one of the girls in his class, and her father was a deputy for our sheriff's department. She told him what had happened, and he had a warrant placed for his immediate arrest. Never saw the teacher again, but everyone saw his mugshot. The really effed up part is, whatever he said to her messed her up so much that she dropped out of school and was homeschooled until graduation. That poor girl. Story number 7. Aside from the usual teacher having sex with student rumors, there are a couple that both turned out to be true-ish. 1, the abortion list, and 2, the drug dealer teacher. So, I went to high school in the 80s, and the abortion list at the school was a thing, but not quite in the way that we thought it was. The rumor was that the school kept a list of all of the girls who had abortions. That wasn't true. The school had a list of discreet abortion providers that was given to girls who wanted or needed it. This was confirmed to me by the principal several years later. The second was the drug-dealing teacher. We had a Spanish teacher who was alleged to be a big-time drug dealer. Living in a huge house, there was no way he could afford it on a teacher's salary, drove fancy cars, 2 to 3 times a teacher's annual salary, took lavish international vacations, frequently to South America, etc. When I was a freshman in high school, I heard these rumors, and they kept up all the way until midway through my senior year when he was arrested at school by the FBI. Turns out when he was younger, he had run several flights of pot into the country and made a bunch of money and then got out. So that part was true, and then became a teacher. Turns out he was involved in all kinds of mail and wire fraud to sustain his lifestyle. Last I heard, he had gotten out of prison after 15 years or so, and then the rumor is he had murdered someone and was back in prison for life. So, with these undersparked videos, I always try to provide a relevant story if I have one. I don't know if there was too much crazy rumors or drama in my school, but I have one that kind of overlaps here. One day, when I was in college, I was chilling in my buddy's car with a few other people, and I complimented the car. And he's like, yeah, it's new. My parents gave it to me. It was their old car. They swapped it out for new ones. And this was a pretty new car, like no more than 3 years old. And I'm like, oh, well, what do your parents do? They're teachers. Both of them? Yeah. And they both got new cars recently? Yeah. And I'm like, Jeremiah, are your parents drug dealers? Because they got nice new cars. And then I suppose for the first time ever, he thinks about it and he stops for a moment and says, maybe, because there's no way public school teachers are getting this many vehicles. They were like living good, or at least moderately well, more than teachers probably should. And this is coming from somebody whose parent used to be a teacher, so I know what that lifestyle looks like to a degree. So I don't know, maybe I need to track Jeremiah down and see if his parents have been arrested recently. Anyway, next story. Story number 8, that the kind and popular teacher was secretly making students get bullied. He's very popular, young, good-looking, and very kind. Guys look up to him and girls have crushes on him. Because of this, students will practically despise students that get special treatment. But turns out that his way to get rid of bad students, he intentionally showed his interest in that particular student, such as saying in front of everyone that if they need help, he'll be there, asking the students to have lunch with him, and so on. Being teenagers, the jealousy, especially the girls, gets bad, and the special students will always end up being bullied or cast away. One of the bullied students eventually realized it, saw the pattern, gathered some proof, and exposed him to the school and posted it online. It was pretty big. Edit. So, I asked around. Turns out that they got a video or recording of him, don't ask me how, I don't know, saying bad things about students and saying that he intentionally made the targeted students bullied so that they can drop out or at least move to another class. No one knows the reason though, and in my opinion, he only wants the best students in his class. Story number 9. I went to school for troubled teens, and the structure there was very different. We weren't allowed to smoke, even if we were 18, or even have relationships, like no dating, period. It was a boarding school, so once you were far enough into the program, they would let you visit home for a couple of days. So, a bunch of wild crap came out of one particular home visit. One kid had lost his virginity, got snitched on, and then all of a sudden, like 20 kids were pulled out of class and brought to the dining area. It turned out a bunch of kids had been dating, screwing, and smoking, and it all came out. They had drug tested everyone, and that group was the first of our school to be on out-of-school suspension, which created a fun new threat for everyone. It feels ridiculous typing this up now in my 30s because so effing what? Some consenting teenagers had sex with each other. But at the time, it was mind-blowing. Thankfully, that school has closed its doors since. Story number 10. My high school had a police officer stationed in it. Huge rumors were always floating around the school of how he was a known bully and he would assault kids. Multiple kids tried to complain throughout the years there, but somehow the officer always got out of it. Finally, after 2 more incidents, he was let go by the school. First kid got caught smoking weed walking to school. I guess he was thrown to the ground pretty hard and the officer said he was resisting arrest. He had serious road burn and multiple bruises, and also everyone knew that this kid was not the type to resist. He was a stoner hippie type that was just smoking weed and loved everybody. Then a girl got pulled over for speeding, and he pulled her out of her car very harshly, and I guess was touching, or as he called it, searching places that a male officer had no business touching, especially on a 16-year-old student. He really only preyed on children that were alone, and I think his higher powers finally caught on to his tricks. A couple of years after, he was let go from the school, and there was a huge story on the news about a couple of police officers, I think 3 or 4, who were arresting homeless people, mostly of native descent, and bringing them just outside of the city and beating the piss out of them, leaving them laying there, then driving away. And guess whose picture was first on the news article? Yup, Karam finally caught up with him, and he was obviously arrested. Last I heard, he was going to be doing some time. And also, I imagine and genuinely hope he is not enjoying his sentence. Crooked cops usually don't have the easiest time in prison. Story number 11. The Stone Face Game. The guys were from our high school. The girls were from a different one. And like 5 or 6 guys on our hockey team claimed that at a party, they got 2 girls to play the Stone Face Game with them. The guys sit around a circular table with their pants pulled down, and the girls go around underneath sucking them off, and they have to keep a straight, blank face. Whoever wins by going the longest without making a face gets a full BJ from the 2 girls. Most people did not believe them. High school hockey players tend to be douchebags anyway, and that just sounded like something that was 100% made up. But then, the 2 girls confirmed it was true, and it had happened exactly how the guys claimed. It was interesting because before that, the people who did believe that it had happened were having a field day, calling the girls the S word, the WH word, skanks, no respect for themselves, etc. And while I didn't say any of those things, I'll admit my 16-year-old brain thought them too. But after they admitted to it, it was like everyone, including myself, had so much more respect for them. I know for me personally, I was so impressed that they just owned it that all of the negative thoughts I'd had about it were pushed to the back of my mind. I ended up becoming friends with one of the girls who were in college, and she was really chill about it. Said she wouldn't do it again and it was a stupid thing, but luckily nothing too horrible came of it besides some people being jerks to them about it. I still have a ton of respect for her for approaching it the way she and the other girl did. But yeah, I was pretty surprised to find out it was a true rumor. Edit. Since people want to make this a feminism thing, I specifically said that those guys were already known to be douchebags. The girls were judged for this incident specifically. The guys were already known as slutty womanizers that most girls stayed away from. Yes, a double standard exists, but this particular case did not have a double standard. People thought everyone involved in it was gross. The reason I mentioned the opinions of the girls shifting is because at first people thought maybe it wasn't true. The guys were all saying it was, so of course they were already being judged. Also, I'm not going to lie to y'all and pretend that a bunch of young teenagers in the 2000s were all sex positive and pro-slut culture. This isn't how it was, so that isn't how I said it was. Also, do whatever you want if you're being safe, but I would still be skeptical of people who did this today. The guys and the girls. It's a somewhat gross activity no matter what your gender or age is. Story number 12. There was a rumor while I was in high school that someone I went to grade school with was dating one of our grade school teachers. I heard it while I was catching up with grade school friends as a sophomore in high school. Well, last year I found out it was sort of true. Turns out that the teacher was actually SAing and doing worse things to my grade school teammate. And also turned out she wasn't the first one either. And our school covered it up, a Catholic school. Also, since it took her years to come forward, we're now 33, nothing can be done about it in our state. She managed to get a restraining order years before, and he had violated it multiple times, but was only arrested once. I wasn't friends with her then, but I am now, and I'm glad we finally put aside our differences to make a change. In working with Ohio State, we are working to change the Speak Up laws to include whenever a victim comes forward, not just up until they're 30. Most victims have repressed memories of these things that take years to surface. We are making a change together, making a positive out of the negative, and she is now one of the strongest survivors I have ever met. Story number 13, not safe for work. As the story went, there was a senior girl who was selling $20 BJs to the football team. This was going on for some time with nobody the wiser. Then she got caught in the act by the girl's PE teacher, and when she told the girl that she was going to have to report it, the girl offered her sex in return for keeping quiet. So, the two commenced on a daily lunchtime munch session. Then the two of them got caught by the boys' PE teacher, and to keep him quiet, both started doing him in a 3-way physical education sex fest. Eventually, the 3 of them got caught by another teacher who turned them all in. The next day, the two teachers and the girl were gone and never to be seen again. That's the story, at least. What I factually know is true is two things. One, with no warning, two teachers and one female student all left the school simultaneously. And two, everything costs more these days. Story number 14. There was a rumor deliberately started by one of my female friends for craps and giggles, and I know for a fact to this day some kid out there who's a year younger than me believes it to be true. So, I get sick often, and during my schooling years, I was that one kid who was absent a lot due to being sick. Also because I had extreme mental health issues and had been in a toxic household, which my mother took me away from and ran when I was 6, and I get sick often because I'm immunocompromised. Not severely, but enough where a simple cold can make me feel like I've been dragged through hell sometimes. It was my second year of high school. This is Australia, so I was in year 8 at the time, aka 8th grade. We don't separate middle school from high school, so it's straight from primary school to high school. Also, kindergarten and pre-primary aren't separated from primary school. Anyway, it's year 8. I'm 12 to 13 years old, and I get sick. Very sick. I'm absent from school for 2 weeks, and my wonderful friend, who we will call Kay, had a plan. A devious one. At some point while I was absent, Kay started a little rumor chain that went throughout the entire school that I was dead. My closest friends knew it was just a rumor and not true, but others thought otherwise. When I came back, Kay told me what happened. I thought it was funny, and seeing as how most people came to realize I actually wasn't dead, I didn't think it was too harmful, except for one kid, a year younger, whose identity is unknown to me and Kay, who came up to Kay while I was still absent, asking him if I really was dead. Kay, being cheeky, said that I was indeed dead. And now there's some poor 17-year-old bloke out there who still believes I am dead to this very day. Doesn't help I dropped out in year 8 for health reasons, making that rumor seem far more likely, as I know I was the talk of the school due to my medical issues. Well, hold on. If the rumors circulated around school that she was dead, wouldn't it circulate around school that she was alive? Probably. I'm just assuming, unless this student was just so far removed from everybody else. Maybe this student had a crush on OP, who knows? And in the age of social media, for all we know, OP may have gotten in this person's recommended to follow or something like that, and be like, huh, who's posting on this dead person's account? That's weird. Are these AI generated? Anyway, next story. Story number 16. Finally, I have a good one or two. First, high school PE teacher my senior year. She was super cool. Like, F running the mile and getting graded on our times. Presentation? F that noise. Great senior year. 1 year later, though, she gets fired for showing up visibly drunk in her pajamas holding a teddy bear. She got fired around middle of the day. Second, and most scandalous, first PE teacher's replacement. Super butch ex-softball pro, yada yada yada. I know because of my younger siblings, and she's a hard ass but grows a soft spot for one girl in particular. This just so happens to be the youngest daughter of a super religious and connected family in the school district. Crap breaks loose, she gets fired, girl graduates, they marry, the girl cheats on her former teacher, more drama, and this is still a sore subject in the area. Story number 17. I had a few from my time in high school, 1996 to 2000. A kid got busted for selling coke. Turns out it was a baggie with crushed up chalk dust in it. He knew it wasn't the real thing, just trying to scam underclassmen. I still think he got expelled for it. Then, an AG Sciences and FFA teacher was suspected of having affairs with students for many years. Apparently, after I graduated, one got pregnant and he was caught. His wife allegedly found out when everyone else did, and then she admitted to helping him embezzle money from the school for a number of years. She worked in the office. Then there was an English teacher and track coach that was known to invite a graduating senior into her classroom every year after the last track meet. Alone. No clue if that was true or not, but she definitely gave off those vibes. Also had a different English teacher who was a wonderful teacher and actually made me give a crap about the subject. She was fired because someone found out she was gay. I caught up with her years later and she admitted as much, but she went on to have a great career outside of education. Story number 18. My town has two that are similar but different outcomes. First, a guy was arrested for having a relationship with and banging a student. She was a junior or senior, and he was the 5th grade teacher who also coached women's hockey. Supposedly, the relationship ended because she, the student, brought him home and gave him the "we're so in love, we want to get married" BS. And her mother went, "Aw, hell nah," and got the cops involved. The guy was arrested and lost his job as a teacher. The weird part is that there was a rumor that the girls on the team had made a bet to see who could screw him first. The girl who banged the teacher also went to prom that year with some rando and wore the reddest, almost scarlet-colored dress I have ever seen. Not sure what became of him or her after she graduated. And then, a guy in the same class as the previous girl screwed the 7th and 8th grade science teacher. Rumor also states that she paid him $1,000 not to tell anyone. Well, the town and school still found out, and my theory being saying that the kid who she supposedly screwed is a moron who went bragging. There wasn't a big stink about it like the first case, but she did quietly resign from teaching, went on to own a local Dairy Queen and get it more prosperous than before, then sold it. Now I think she does MLM stuff. Story number 20. There were a few. The headmaster was knobbing the deputy head, possibly true. In fact, an old teacher of mine I bumped into years ago said it was. Then, the head of games, a bloke in his 30s or 40s, was engaged to a 19-year-old. Highly unlikely to be true. She might have been 19 when they got engaged, but she was 19 all the way through high school. Then, one of her science teachers was a lesbian, on account of her being in her 40s and still a miss. This was the late 1980s, mind you. Highly unlikely to be true. Then, one of our English teachers was gay. Not true. He was married. He was just a miserable F, though. Then, one of our history teachers had a bad drink problem and got banned from driving after running over a kid while pissed up. Jury's out on this one. And then, another history teacher died. But he didn't. He retired suddenly on medical grounds. Story number 21. So, this kinda involves me. The rumor was that I had touched this one girl's boob and either got expelled or suspended, I forget which. What actually happened was that me and a friend were walking behind her and he dared me to touch her arm. She moved her arm and at the last second I touched her armpit. Shortly after that, I ended up getting sick and staying home for a few days. I only heard about it because my stepmom at the time took me into school to get stuff out of my locker around the time I was getting better, and someone else was asking me about it. Story number 22. Before I started high school, I was always being told by my older friends and family that there were tunnels under the school and in the walls. I didn't believe it because it obviously sounded crazy. That was until I stayed a little late to help one of my teachers move her stuff to a new class for the next year. We were moving the desks when she ushered me to the closet in the corner of her class. Inside the closet was some basic classroom stuff and another door. She opened the door, and behind it was a hallway that led to the basement of the school. I was obviously amazed. In the basement, there were about 5 other hallways that all led to different corners of the school. We went down one, I don't remember which one, and it led us to her new class. I remember my teacher saying to me, "I'm lucky that I got another class with a door to the basement," and I was shocked for the rest of the week. I got to go into the tunnels a few more times after that for other stuff, and it never stopped being cool. Story number 23. This happened like 7 years ago, and I still remember this one rumor in high school because of how crazy it was. There was a girl who was dating this low-key popular guy in my sophomore history class and had a crush on his older brother who was a junior. Then she went over to their house while the older brother was alone and convinced him to drink with her, although she didn't actually drink anything. Then, once he was wasted, she forced herself on him. Didn't tell anyone or her boyfriend until a few months later they found out she was pregnant. Her boyfriend even tried to be understanding and offered to be the baby's father and help raise the child. She ended up having her rich parents fly her out to somewhere in Europe, I can't remember exactly where, I think Greece or Italy, to get an abortion. Her parents even bought her a dog because it was such a scary experience, and a lot of people at first thought that the rumor was a little over the top. But then she decided to video call her friends in class while in Europe with her dog, complaining about being pregnant and when she is getting her abortion. For about a month or two, her now ex-boyfriend was depressed and didn't talk to anyone, including his older brother, and was always emotional in class. Everyone felt terrible for him. Story number 24. Not high school, but middle school. There was this really creepy teacher who made all the girls sit in the front. Rumors were that, well, you could guess. It was apparently so widespread that before the year even started, this girl I knew's family immediately demanded to give her a different teacher. That girl's parents happened to be very influential in the community, and the school's administration undoubtedly knew but did nothing. Even though I eavesdropped in her talks between an administrator and teacher about the issue, there was no action taken. Even though I'm not a girl, I tried to stay as far away from that teacher as I could. I got out of 8th grade and moved on to 9th grade. And one day though, about a year later, I was looking at teacher reviews on ratemyteachers.com when I looked up my old middle school. I saw his reviews and I was disturbed. I can't find these reviews anymore because Rate My Teachers deleted all of their reviews for some reason, but here's what they said to the best of my memory. First, I saw a review from 2008 that explained his creepy behavior in detail. The line that I remember particularly is, "He took one look up my shirt and let me go," meaning this predatory behavior from this teacher had been going on for 9 years by the time I got there. Then a review from 2017, the same year I was there, which said he was fired near the beginning of the year for getting too close to another student. God only knows what that entails. I tried looking through the sex offender registry or something like that, but I couldn't find him. I only know his last name, so maybe if I knew his first name, I could find something. As of now, I don't know what happened to him. Story number 25. We had a high school math teacher that always seemed entirely too enthusiastic. Ended up being a predator, Mr. Rogers. I crap you not, one of the grandsons or great-grandsons of the inventor of the soda tab, the thing you pop open to a canned drink, was teaching math just for fun. Genuinely seemed like he loved math, teaching, and helping mold a brighter future for his students. He was also the track coach for 10 plus years. Then, 2 years later after I graduated, he was found on the school camera cross-dressing in the high school's cheerleading outfit with an anime pink wig and stilettos on. But that wasn't even the final nail in the coffin. See, we always found it weird that the track team and drama club kept their spare clothes in his classroom for changeouts. Apparently, he did it as a favor since other facilities didn't have air conditioning. But after the cheerleader cross-dressing, boom. Video footage compiled for years of high schoolers changing in and out of school clothes. Story number 26. Not high school, but middle school. But believe me when I say this makes it so much worse. We were 12 at the time, and there was a rumor that said that a girl was sending nudes to older guys. I was the type of person who didn't care about what happens at school, so I kinda just ignored it. That was until she told me proudly in the changing room that it was true. Turns out that she sent nudes to this 17-year-old guy and also sent him her address. She told me it wasn't that bad because he was a friend of the brother of a classmate. I was about to tell her off, but then she said, giggling, that she also started sending nudes to a 23-year-old. And that was my breaking point. I tried telling her that these were predators, but she just laughed and told me it wasn't a big deal. I told our teacher about it, and she called her parents. A week later, we had a lesson about sexting and safety on the internet. Story number 27. I accidentally started one. A girl was pregnant and she'd reached the point that you could hear the heartbeat, so she was letting people listen through a stethoscope. I did it, and I distinctly heard 4 separate heartbeats, and I told her, I think there's triplets in there. She thought I was joking, but I was serious. As she got bigger way faster than normal, the rumor really grew like smoke and flame. It wasn't so much mockery as it was bafflement and concern because she wasn't that big in size or height. Until finally, she and her boyfriend went to get an ultrasound to prove everyone wrong, and bam! 1, 2, 3 triplets. 2 girls and a boy. She walked up to me in class one day and slapped me across the face, not hard at all, understandably almost crying, and just went, "How on earth did you know?" before she started crying for real. Turns out I wasn't the only one who suspected triplets. Her grandma said the same thing, but she was desperately hoping it wasn't true. Story number 28. That the music teacher was a predator and could be seen visibly aroused sometimes during lessons. This was a rumor when we were like in year 7, so like 11 years old, so we all snickered about it and thought it was so funny. He was our form tutor, I think Americans call it homeroom, so we'd see him every single day, but we never actually saw any evidence to support the rumors other than him being a little weird sometimes. Suddenly, he stopped coming in halfway through year 7, and then in year 8, we had a different form tutor. I didn't think much of it. Then in year 9, he was in a local newspaper, having been arrested for SAing young boys at a school before ours. Was crazy when we all realized that it was actually true and not just a funny joke about a slightly strange teacher. Story number 29. There was a rumor at our Christian school, a school so conservative that the girls were banned from ever wearing shorts, and going to an R-rated movie could get you expelled, that the pastor's daughter had a voracious sexual appetite. The school was part of the church, so that made it extra saucy. But then the story took a dark turn. It turned out she had started her sexual exploration young enough that you had to wonder if an adult had introduced her to sex, which also turned out to be true. We never learned the who, what, or why. Then it got worse, way worse. Her mother was distraught at the daughter's promiscuity, and by the fact that, at 24, she wanted to move out of the house. They were followers of evangelist Bill Gothard, who taught that young girls should live with their parents until their parents found a suitable husband. You have heard of Gothard from some of his more famous disciples, the Duggar family. And so on a cold day in November 2000, the mother, Mary Lee Suter, shot her daughter, Jenny Suter, and then ended herself. After her death, the church exclaimed that the daughter was a victim of satanic ritual abuse in the 80s, though they failed to explain what this had to do with their mother murdering her. Make of that as you will. Story number 30. There was a teacher/assistant football coach who was way too friendly with a certain student since she took his class in her sophomore year. She was 15 at the time, and he was in his 30s. From then on, it wasn't uncommon to see them flirting in his room after school hours, and there were a lot of rumors from people seeing them together outside of school. I saw her get in his car once, but never really thought they were hooking up. It was obvious she had a crush on him, and they were closer than a student teacher should be. I thought it wasn't right that he was entertaining it, but never thought he would actually be messing around with her. Fast forward to her senior year, she graduates and goes off to the big local state school for college. There was a superstar football player who graduated with her and was nationally recruited, but he committed to the same state school to stay close to home, and the coach took a job with the college to basically be his personal assistant. Technically, he was hired on the coaching staff, but in a very fringe capacity. He was the football player's tutor and tried to keep him out of trouble. That summer, they were pretty much out in the open about their relationship and didn't really try to hide anything, and I couldn't believe it turned out to be true. The football player couldn't stay out of trouble, got kicked off the team after his third strike, and the coach was dismissed with him, but they stayed together. I always thought it was odd that nothing ever came of it, but I guess nothing really could come of it after the fact. He was an assistant positions coach when I was on the team, and I always thought he was a slimy dude, but damn, that's slimy. Story number 31. I got 3 of them. First, one white girl family had paid the school to kick out a black guy. Let's call the girl Michelle and the dude Mike. Apparently, Michelle was trying to give Mike hints that she likes him, but he understood them and said that he's not interested in her. 2 weeks before Mike got kicked out from school, I was taking an exam in the head of high school office and heard a conversation of a parent with the school lady. Mother of the girl was saying pretty straightforward that a donation of $100K would be made to the school and she would pocket $10K, and that she would hope that tomorrow there would be an intent to see school change for the better. Summarizing that conversation before school lady remembered that I was behind a wall and turned on the white noise machine. They wanted one specific student to be gone since he does not respect other students. Then, through the white noise machine, I hear the teacher lady say one final yes, and then Michelle's mom left. The second story was 20 minutes later, another parent came in and donated school money to make sure that their son, who was saying a lot of stupid and racist crap, would have everything covered up with "I am Jewish," so that they would not have any report of such actions on report cards. And finally, number 3, 2 years later, by the year I was graduating, there was a rumor that HS and MS Office can adjust student grade and exam material to test student on according to their opinion. Luckily, throughout all those miserable years in that school, I got friends with many kids and teachers. As it turns out, later, a couple of professors and students whose parents worked for the school had shown me a picture or actual email from the school with evidence, proving transactions or emails saying that every student grade will be adjusted if needed by the HS office. It was sad to see a good school turn into a complete crap show. Well, everyone, I'm definitely going to have to take OP's word for it when it comes to that school becoming a crap show, because this person's grammar is atrocious. Obviously, you can't see it, but I had to change up the sentences quite a bit because I can tell when someone probably isn't a native English speaker, and then sometimes I can tell when someone's an English speaker who's just illiterate, and this is the latter of the two. That school must have messed OP up bad because this grammar is awful. Anyway, next story. Story number 32. I went to an exclusive all-boys prep school in the southeastern U.S. The first was that one of the younger lady teachers had sex with a handful of students while she was purportedly house-sitting for a family who had a student at another school in the area. For reference, these high school students were 15 to 16 at the time, and she was a middle school teacher grades 7 to 8. She was promptly fired after the allegations turned out to be true, but would continue to have sex with a various number of other kids in exchange for Adderall. Not a great look for the school, but they spent a boatload of money covering everything up once it hit the media. The other was that the head of the middle school, I think the assistant to the principal/regional manager type position, who was constantly giving our class lectures on morality and how we all lacked a compass in that regard, was found to be embezzling tens of thousands of dollars over the years in school field trip funds, for which he would overcharge, then pocket the additional cash. He was a terrible person and very much had it out for mischievous young me. So that one was very validating, deserved his jail sentence and the bankruptcy that followed. Pretty sure he also had to move out of state. Story number 33. Went to a public high school that was right next to a hospital. When I was a freshman, the kids who were in the advanced medical field, taking anatomy and biology classes, fast track to a good med school, would go over to the hospital a few times a year for in-person demonstrations of certain basic medical practices. Stuff like setting bones in casts, etc. I wasn't a part of it, but my friend Colin was. There were always rumors that this field trip thing to the hospital was started because a student died on campus back in the 80s. And they had to carry him across the street instead of actually telling anyone. The rumor was that they drowned in a pool. I thought it was dumb because we didn't have a pool. We had 2 gyms, one for basketball and one for wrestling. Colin, however, 100% believed the rumor. Years later, senior year, and Colin had moved to Idaho. I missed the dude and wished that he had graduated with the kids he'd grown up with since middle school. I was taking AP Art History, and we were on the last day, so the teacher was giving us a fun little history lesson about the school. He had old newspaper clippings of student athletes and events from the time period for us to look through, and then I found it. I found a newspaper that had a student going to the Olympics for swimming that was from our school. The photo was clearly of the wrestling gym because the windows and bleachers were in the same spot, but it was a pool. I don't know if the rumor of the kid dying is true or if they filled in the pool because of the costs, but I took a picture of it and sent it to Colin. The pool was real. Story number 34. A lot of teacher effing student stories here, and while I sadly do have a story like that, I'll be different and go with the other big rumor. The principal was embezzling school funds. People thought about it for years because he was way too well off for a high school principal. He had an effing Bentley that he drove to school and parked in the faculty lot every effing day. I was actually the one to find out about it too, to know for sure. Our school had a number of courses specifically for learning valuable trades, stuff like auto repair, childcare and development, cooking as a profession, and computer technology. I took the computer courses, got to learn about a lot of repair and maintenance stuff for desktops, laptops, even servers. One day, in the tail end of my junior year, one of the servers for the faculty's computer access went down for seemingly no reason. To keep it simple, almost everyone was completely incapable of accessing their materials, attendance trackers, grade books, basically anything they would need to conduct class. The head of IT was also the tech teacher, and it was too much for him to handle on his own, so he pulled me and this one other kid that was a senior. Now, the only one that really cared to fix it was the teacher, so we just looked busy, and for me, that entailed rummaging through directories to see what was there. I found one that was hidden and had a bunch of restrictive permissions that made it almost impossible to access, unless you knew it existed, knew the password, or had admin access to the entire server, which we did given the situation. I poured through it and found a ton of spreadsheets about the school's budget and finances, and even at a glimpse, I could see some of the math didn't add up. I created a disk image of what I found, basically an exact copy of the entire system that I could boot up later, and went back to poking around after. That night, I was at home, partitioning the drive and loading the contents of what I found onto it. I had proof that he was fudging the numbers for everything, and that money would regularly get earmarked for things that never happened. School trips, replacing items in the library, budget increases, and so on. I kept looking through it just to make sure I wasn't wrong or missing anything. Spent weeks of time doing so after school. In the last week of that year, I spoke to the teacher about it, and he said that he wanted to see what I was talking about. So I made a copy and brought it to the school the following day. That's when I found out that the tech teacher was in on it. I was practically dragged to the principal's office and learned that it was very much a group effort that nearly all of the administrators were in on. The tech teacher, the principal, the 4 assistant principals, the office manager, and the school's treasurer all knew about it and coordinated to keep it hidden from the district and students. We ended up agreeing it would be best to keep it quiet, came to an agreement that benefited all of us. I wouldn't say anything, I would not take the final class for certification my senior year, but I would be guaranteed the schedule I wanted outside of that one class, and my final transcript would have passing grades. Essentially, senior year was literally show up and graduate for me. I took the deal. After signing the paperwork on my last day of school, basically certifying that I was cleared to graduate, I destroyed all the copies of the data I had, and we all moved on. And one of them still works at that school today. Same position they were in all those years ago. A couple still work for the district in higher positions, most moved on to other places shortly I had left, and all but one of them still works in education administration to this day. So, fellow viewers, what would you do if you were in OP's situation? Would you come to an agreeable resolution, or would you just be like, yeah, sure, totally, and then snitch on all 9 of them? Knowing me and who I was in high school, I probably could have been easily coerced into them just being like, here's what we're gonna do for you. All right, you're gonna graduate, and you just need to show up and not snitch on us. And I'd be like, oh, okay. My spine was still developing back then. You'll have to forgive me. What would I do today? I don't know. I'm not in high school anymore, but I'm curious what you would do. Anyway, next story. Story number 35. First day of first semester. In grade 9 religion, a teacher stated that she will be our religion teacher for the semester, but starting tomorrow, she would be away for 2 weeks. But then she would be back. We had a supply for 2 weeks, who then had to be replaced with another supply as the original teacher still was not back. We got no explanation. The rumor was that the teacher was in rehab. I thought that sounded insane. 2-week rehab that suddenly got extended? But also the school originally was going to let her back after 2 weeks? I mentioned the teacher to my English teacher with whom I was somewhat close with, and she told me that the teacher's sister originally was just having surgery and needed to be careful for post-op, but then it turned out she was more ill than originally known and needed much more extensive care. So the teacher was off for like 2 to 3 months caring for her sister. She did eventually return, and she was mean. I hated her, but she was definitely not teaching classes day before rehab. Story number 36, that our shop teacher was high most of the time. It never got out to most people as verified, except that my brother, a huge stoner in school, caught him lighting up out in the parking lot one day, and the trade-off for not telling anyone was a joint. All in all, he was a great teacher. He'd let you have food in class as long as he got his cut, and he passed you as long as you tried and didn't do anything stupid or dangerous in the shop. Here's to you, Mr. T. Hope you are enjoying your retirement. Here are some other stories that I have. It was a Catholic school that had a priest assigned to it. The one we had when I started going there was a prick, always yelling at girls for their skirts being too short, telling students they needed to respect him because he was a representative of God, never debating anything, only dictating. Well, he made some girls very uncomfortable with leading questions during confession, and he was promptly replaced. Then, our principal for 2 years of high school hated the school and her job, but was doing it to get a better position at the school board. She let her vice principal handle most things, and anytime she was ever seen doing something with students, it was usually yelling at them or getting into conflicts with teachers. Well, she got a promotion and proceeded to gut the school's budget in the following years. Since it was a Catholic school, the official line was that all of the teachers were Catholic, at least on paper, but the vast majority of them were either non-practicing or atheists. We'd have a monthly mass that the entire school took part in, and it was mandatory. I'm talking the teacher doing a count before leaving the classroom, leading the class to the cafeteria, and then doing a count when you return. Well, I wasn't having any of that crap and skipped as many as I could get away with. I waited for the teacher to do the count and then watched to see if they were going to be the first or last out of the room. Then I made sure I was out first or last and went in the opposite direction, then made sure to merge back in with the crowd since it was over. I was caught a few times by other teachers out on patrol for students skipping. None of them ever gave me any crap for it and just told me to get back to class. And in one instance, I was told to be sneakier. That school was so focused on its outward appearance of being a school for good Catholic kids, but it was all hypocrisy and bullcrap. Story number 37. When I was a freshman, an English teacher suddenly disappeared. No one knew where he went. Some people said he went to Germany, and some people said he got arrested. During my senior year, I asked a teacher for the real story. The teacher who told me the story was Mr. Bender. Bender said that the teacher who suddenly disappeared had been caught kissing a cheerleader and had to leave the school for a while until everything was over and was fired. High school was crazy, man. Also, Mr. Angel was rumored to carry a gun on him at all times. Angel was a super badass math teacher, used to be in the military, worked for the FBI, before finally settling down and becoming a math teacher. No one really believed it, until one day he bent over in class and we saw the handle of his gun sticking out of the back of his pants. Super cool, really chill. He also told us a story about how he was in the Middle East, he had been injured by an explosive, and had a chip implanted in his brain that he needed to charge occasionally. I have no idea if that was just a joke or if he was serious. While teaching, he would screen share his iPad while sitting at his desk and work through math problems with us. And I caught a glimpse of his calendar a few times, and there was a reminder, charge head. Story number 38, that the 11th grade science teacher was a pervert. There were rumors that when young girls would ask for extra credit, he would offer ways to bump their grade up, and they'd do it because they didn't want to flunk. So one day, my friends and I decided to put this rumor to the test. So my friend, who was absolutely stunning and just happened to be flunking in his class, went up to him with her phone secretly audio recording in her back pocket. She asked if there were any ways to bump up her grade, and the teacher said, "Meet me after class and we can talk about bumping up your grade." So we were like, holy crap, we're about to catch this man. We last second decided to get the school officer involved though, just in case she went into the room after class and was on a phone call with us. But our end was muted so he couldn't hear, but we, including the officer standing in the hall with us, could hear everything while he was recording the entire audio on his body cam. We gave our friend a word to say if the teacher made any explicit advances so we could burst in and stop him. He then, and I quote, said, "I can bump you all the way up to an A if you don't make a sound while I do this." And she was like, "Do what?" And he slammed his lips against hers without any hesitation. So she pushed him off and she was like, "Why did you kiss me?" And he covered her mouth with his hand and said to her, "You want an A, don't you?" And tried to grope her. So she ripped his hand off of her and shouted the safe word, which was grapefruit. and the officer bursts in, catching him mid-grope. So yeah, we busted the rumor and sent a teacher to jail. Story number 39. It happened to be a rumor about me. Not high school, but when I was in 8th grade in a crappy middle school, in PE class, I got punched in the face by a racist white guy in my grade outside while walking on the track over bantering with her guy friend. Most of the kids in our class saw, and the PE teachers got there before I was able to throw a punch back. I had to get stitches because my glasses broke and cut my face. While in the nurse's office, I got reprimanded by the principal and the nurse for getting involved with her, even though she made an offensive racial comment before she punched me. At the time, my family moved out of the jurisdiction for that specific school, but they still allowed me to attend. My grandma picked me up early, and when I got home, I called my mom at work. When I told my mom what happened and what the principal said to me, that was the last day anyone at that school saw me. Apparently, everyone thought that I got into so much trouble for it that I had to go to continuation school, and it ended up being a huge rumor that it even carried along to 2 high schools, the one I went to and the other one on the other side of town. I didn't hear about this until some of the kids ended up at the same high school as me and were extremely surprised. They came up to me and asked me why I wasn't in the Reformation school, and I told them what really happened. My mom actually transferred me to the new gorgeous $45 million middle school that they opened that was down the street from that other crappy school because that school was close to where we moved, and everyone got jealous since you could only go there if you lived in its jurisdiction. Story number 40. I have 3. I landed in the small town my husband grew up in for grades 8 to 12. There was this dude, in his 30s now, who is a total predator POS. He SA'd my 2 middle school-aged neighbors when we were in high school. Had them rub themselves up against trees, naked. The dude is effed up. I threw a full wine bottle through his front bay window that New Year's Eve. Still no regrets. Anyway, before we found out this dude was also a predator, there was this rumor that whipped around town about him smearing his poo all over the school bathroom one day. My husband recently cleared this up for me. He went to the Catholic elementary school that my husband went to. When they were in grade 8, this dude went into the bathroom, took a crap, then picked the crap up out of the toilet, set a booby trap with the door plus poop, then dipped. The next person in was the janitor, so obviously he went straight to the principal. The thing was, my husband's best friend had gone into the washroom at the exact same time as the kid. So they were both called into the office and questioned. But they were only doing due diligence. They knew who did the poo thing. Then also at my school, the super rad science teacher that everyone loved had a fancy new girlfriend one summer. She had just graduated. They both maintained that nothing happened prior, but anyway, they're married and have kids now. Then the other science teacher. Dude was hot AF. Tongue pierced, nipple pierced, cool. We all lusted in grade 10 science. I was 15, he was 24. A few years after I graduated, he was voluntold to quit. Turns out he couldn't hold it together and started effing students. This was all kept hush-hush and swept under the rug. Story number 41. I have a lot that all circle around me. My favorite one was that I was going to shoot up the school. This was just last year and lasted for an entire semester. The day it all started, I got called down to the office. They had asked if they could search my bag for some list of names that didn't exist. I told them it was the area and volume of spheres and hemispheres. They never found that list. They also tried to blame me for a post on Snapchat, which was funny because I have no social media. After that, they sent me on my way. I go on about my day as if it hadn't happened when I get called down again. My mother had taken her lunch break to go to my school to say how proud of me she was and that she loved me. I was confused as no one had yet told me what I was originally called down for. Later at home, she explained to me that the entire school, save 3 people, thought I was a school shooter. Fast forward to sometime later that month, about a week or so, when I get called down again because someone had seen me drawing skulls and guns around the list of names. The names still didn't exist and neither did the drawings. In fact, I was drawing a life ring tattoo design for when my cat passes. The cat has kept me alive to this day, and I told them this and showed them what I was working on. Fast forward to a week before Christmas break when I had taken Monday off for my mental health. Honestly glad I did this because apparently 1/3 of the school had not shown up. The reason? I was planning to shoot up the school that day, and my best friend was a part of that missing group. I never did shoot up the school. In fact, I told a lot of people that I would have rather shot myself than any of those bozos. Story number 42. The rumor was that our married gym coach, think Tom Selleck here, was hooking up with the prettiest cheerleader girl in our entire school. Think Farrah Fawcett in her youthful prime, long blonde hair and all. Gorgeous girl, could have gone far. The teacher was 38M and she was 15F. Did it prove to be true? Well, it proved to be 9 pounds of a bouncing baby boy true. Our final month in grade school, rumor was that Mr. Gym Coach was fired, but no one was saying why, and Miss Gorgeous and her family had moved away, hence her absence. How would we survive without the handsome coach and our very own Dallas Cowboys cheerleader? A year later in high school, we're all in the commons area chit-chatting when who walks in carrying a baby and not looking as cheerful as we remember? Yup, the cheerleader who had decided that screwing with a married man who could offer her nothing was worth screwing, and now was stuck with a little boy and no graduation memories or future fun. Apparently, according to her former friends, the coach was caught with the cheerleader in a locked gym office by the female gym coach and a student returning equipment. Turned in the coach, and he was fired. The cheerleader spent her class days crying about how scared she was because she was 3 months pregnant. She had planned to put it up for adoption because she didn't like kids. The rumors finally reached to the cheerleader's mom and dad, and they found out, and all hell breaks loose. Coach didn't want to leave his wife, but was forced to divorce and marry cheerleader or face going to jail. So they married and moved to California, had their baby, and he left her there and returned to his wife. They then packed up and left the state for unknown parts, never to be seen again. And the cheerleader returned home with humble pie dripping off her lips and baby formula on her clothes to live with her parents in the middle of nowhere. Talk about a waste. She was Hugh Hefner beautiful, and she goes and does this with that dirtbag. Story number 43. Teachers with students who went to the school were helping their kids get special treatment. I always heard about it, but none of us really believed it until we graduated and learned more. One of our guidance counselors got his daughter the lead in every musical, got her into special classes, had her taking senior math while she was still in middle school. Turns out he would lose it at teachers who didn't treat her specially and used his guidance counselor knowledge to ensure he could, basically, not tell other students about opportunities so that she could take advantage of them. She was smart and talented, but would have been fairly average in my school without him. Another student got caught cheating on the AP Literature exam senior year. Needed a good score on it to go to the college that he'd been accepted at. His mom was a math teacher at our school and raised hell until she was promised he wouldn't be punished and got off with a slap on the hand. Still went to college, still walked on time at graduation, still passed the classes. Crap was crazy. Story number 44. The rumor in our school was that the choir teacher was giving private lessons to one of the girls in the upperclassmen choir. Turns out to have been true. And he was trying to get a second student to practice her vocal exercises on him as well. He spent some time in jail and now sells jewelry on a local QVC-like channel, and that started a cascade of events. The principals were handed an apparently credible allegation that a first-year English teacher fresh out of college had sex with a student during a football game. I don't recall her going to jail, but she definitely got fired. Then another English teacher during his first year at our high school, though not in teaching, thought he would be edgy and crack jokes about both teachers during class. The school being somewhat touchy at the moment canned him as well. If I recall correctly, my county had one of the highest rates of teen pregnancy per capita for a while there. I wonder why. Story number 45. I've got one for me and another from my best friend. Me. It was rumored for over a year that one of the cheerleaders was effing the football captain. It was later proven true when she ended up pregnant with his kid and told him at lunch. Word quickly spread around and she ended up leaving the school not long afterwards. Same for the baby daddy. Ran into the girl a few months back and it turns out they didn't stick together and she's a single mom. As for my best friend's story, at her school it was rumored that the janitor would take money to smuggle anything one might want into the school, which routinely searched students' bags for security when in truth it was just a school with a principal who was desperate to have kids pass the presidential fitness test. So they made rules against snacks, sodas, etc., but the janitor would smuggle stuff in since staff were never searched. She later found out it was true after said janitor got busted because another kid snitched. Okay, look, so far most of the stories have been teachers sleep with student, and I get that, that's bad, okay? But this one's tame, it's cool, it's chill, it's alright, it's fine, snacks and sodas, and then someone snitches? Why would this student do that? What does he stand to gain other than being a total ass? I hope he gets unmatched on Tinder for the rest of his life, and I hope he steps on Legos every time he's barefoot, and if the student in question was a guy, I hope his car perpetually needs an oil change for the rest of time. If it's a woman, I hope she never finds a tampon again. You took away snacks and soda. How dare you? Anyway, next story. Story number 47. In the 8th grade, there was a rumor that the math teacher was effing a female student. I was in the same math section as both of them. It was very obviously true. Everyone knew and even kind of joked about it, but I think at that age, nobody really understood the severity or what to even do about it. He was charged 3 years later, and nobody was surprised at all. It went to trial, and the principal got tied up into it, because apparently some students reported that it was happening, but she ignored them. Actually, even gave them detention for spreading false rumors. The teacher went to prison, and I reckon he's still in there, but I'm not sure. The student was a really nice girl too. I'm sorry it happened to her. She wrote a public blog about it for a while, sharing how confusing it was to feel in love with him and feeling guilty for turning him in, while also slowly getting older and realizing it was wrong. Story number 48. There were a few. The main one was that the male and female PE teachers were secretly married. Completely false. I asked and he explained that coincidentally they had gone on a date once before he worked there. Didn't hit it off but remained friends. She had since married someone else but kept it a secret from the students because she liked the compliments she would often get from male students. She was conventionally very attractive. Another was that one of the students in my year was having sex with her boyfriend in the park during lunch. I knew her, so I asked, and yes, she was. No, it wasn't a secret, but it wasn't in the park. That was just a joke to wind up some kids that weren't getting any. And the third one I can remember is that the media and English teachers were dating despite both being married to other people. Everyone thought this one was utter tosh given it seemed too wild for either character involved, and there was no evidence to back it up. Right up until she got fired and he was suspended for 6 months for having an extramarital affair in the classroom. It's always the quiet ones. There were many, many more, but these were the most interesting ones. I tended to ask people because I was usually the one who people made rumors about, and I enjoyed winding people up by neither confirming nor denying them. For the record, all of the ones about me were false, except the one about me having a girlfriend. People just didn't really understand me at school, and I liked it that way. Story number 49. Actually, I was the one who caused the big rumor. Well, me and my friends. The rumor was that some insane guys hacked someone to death in a ravine with an axe and got away with it. Needless to say, the rumor was not true, but under the circumstances, it was understandable. What actually happened was this. My friends and I decided to go camping in a ravine near our city and to drop acid. The ravine was a nice campsite with a flowing river, little waterfall, and reasonably remote. We brought all the stuff for camping: a tent, an axe to get firewood, even, fortunately, a medical kit. However, we made a big dumb mistake. We took the LSD before we set up the camp. This was unfortunate. I was setting up the tent when the acid started to hit, and suddenly the ropes and pegs assumed all sorts of significance that they did not have before. Contemplating these things did not simplify the task, and one of my friends was getting firewood. He managed to hurt himself rather badly with the axe. Obviously, using an axe while under the influence was not a good idea. I would have stopped him had I known what he was about, and he was bleeding quite a bit, and it was getting dark out. Fortunately, as mentioned, we had the first aid kit. His wound was actually not too bad, and we were able to patch him up okay, but not before getting literally covered with blood. This kind of put a bit of a spin on the trip. I remember looking down, my hands covered in blood, looking up, and the sky at sunset was the same shade of red as the blood, and thinking, this happened and the night has just begun. Then it got full dark and we made a fire. The only problem was there was a lack of firewood. Needless to say, after the misadventure with the axe, no one was too eager to seriously process anything, and so we were burning sticks and bits that we could collect, without leaving the circle of firelight, which was like life itself at that point. We got so desperate we were burning balled up toilet paper and orange drink crystals. They burned surprisingly well, and suddenly we heard voices coming towards us. We were thinking, great, now the cops show up. But it wasn't them, it was a couple of kids from our school. They heard there was a ravine party, and they were there to party it up. What they found was a somewhat grim-faced crew staring fixedly into a dying fire, rather blood-stained and with a bloody axe propped up against a tree. The injured fellow's foot was swathed in a sock, so it wasn't obviously visible, nor were we in any fit state to explain what happened. But we only had one request for the guys: please get firewood. They piled up a bunch and then asked if they could go. We had no idea why they asked permission until next Monday when we got to school and heard the rumor. These two guys were sure they had narrowly escaped being murdered with an axe, having allegedly witnessed the bloody aftermath of a murder. Story number 50. I've been with my partner since 6th grade, and it was never a secret to anyone that we were dating, especially in such a small school. Even the teachers didn't really care when we held hands and gave quick goodbye kisses before classes. Like, everyone knew we were gonna get married, so whatever. We weren't sucking face in the hall like other students, we were good. But even so, a lot of rumors about me went around that would make it back to me. Like, people would walk up to me in the hall and confront me about stuff, especially when he started going to a vocational school, so I was alone and easier to target, I guess. A lot of crap people were saying I did that I had no idea where it started from. Sending nudes, all kind of specific sexual acts. People really seem to have some imaginations on them. And well, to be fair, none of that was true at the time. But now? Oh yeah, definitely. Story number 51. Not really a rumor, but a teacher came to our school for training. He must have been about 18 to 19 years old and lived locally. He sat in a few of our classes and a few lads were talking to him after because they knew him. Turned out about a month prior, a few of them were at a house party where everyone was boozed boozed up, sniffing coke, taking ecstasy, and just having a fantastic time. The guy who was training to be a teacher was there and was indulging in a few Class A's. So everyone in our year either knew him or found out about this. Nobody snitched because this guy was sound and they didn't want to ruin his career prospects. This was about 17 to 18 years ago, and all the guys from my class were about 16 at the time. I know it sounds a bit effed up now, but it would have been a case of the teacher going to his mate's party and the younger ones would be invited by the host's teenage brother or something. Wasn't a case of old fellas inviting secondary school students to a party. Story number 52. That a history teacher had a twin that would sometimes teach for him. People noticed slight differences over time, and when the evil twin would be working, he would forget things previously agreed to or said. Everyone said they skipped school and went to a comic book convention far away from town and saw our teacher selling comic books with some erotic twist on the same day that our teacher was acting weird. It turns out that they shared the job quite often and used it as their side hustle for health insurance. And the doctors had no idea that there were twins too. Once it came to light, there was a scandal, but then people realized both had education degrees and were actually decent teachers. The other twin was hired, but later fired when he was caught drawing questionably tasteless art of the girl students. Now the rumor is that the evil twin, is still teaching from time to time. Story number 54. At high school, we had a computing studies teacher that everyone thought was creepy, and there was various rumors about him. He had long ginger hair and a ponytail, a goatee, big thick glasses, and was a total computer geek. Kind of a stereotype here, I guess. After I left high school in 2006, he got charged with possession of indecent images of children. He didn't get found guilty at court, however. His defense was he was moderating for an adult website and had removed the images from there and forgot to delete them from his computer. Sure. If I remember correctly, he had only 8 or 9 images found on his personal computer. I say only not to detract from his heinous crime, but just because usually people get caught with like hundreds or more. But he lost his job and got struck off the teacher registry, but avoided jail time. Story number 55. High school guidance counselor was rumored to have made a few inappropriate comments and advances on some young girls and boys over the 2 years I was there. At one point, the police came in with warrants and took his office computer and informed him that officers were at his home confiscating his home computers as well. He was not arrested at the time, only under investigation. He didn't go home, he drove somewhere and then took his own life. Nothing else ever came of it that any of us heard. Nothing was in the news other than him taking his own life. No mention of allegations of any kind. Only that he was under investigation by the police. At the time, I assumed he knew he was about to go away for some heinous crap, but it makes me sad to think about the possibility that he may have been innocent and just didn't trust his chances as a black man in the legal system. I imagine if any evidence of wrongdoing had turned up, it would have been in the news, but we heard literally nothing else about it. Story number 56. The rumor was that the gym teacher was banging the sports and cheerleader girls. Everyone talked about it, but for the most part, it was a rumor. A year after I graduated, he was busted, and it was all true. Of course, all of the girls claimed to be victims, but they bragged about it. Not victim blaming, but if you were there and knew who was involved, you would know. Usually, you can't name and shame, but F it. Predators shouldn't be protected. He was Jonathan Kirk from Pikeview High School 2013-ish. He had just had a kid with his wife too, and will miss out on their entire growing up. Wife defended him every step of the way, if I remember correctly. And he also caused a lifelong back injury in me that I still deal with a decade later. F you. Story number 57. School 1. The pastor took his own life. The school tried to tell students it was a heart attack, but that wasn't what the obituary said. Kids aren't stupid. School 2. The principal was caught making advances on junior high and high school girls at a K-12 school. School 3. There was a predator teacher. He was caught with images on his work computer. And as a bonus story, I went to high school with this guy that wanted to become a youth pastor. My brother told me the guy, we'll call him Jeff, became a youth pastor at the school we used to go to. I heard Jeff was the best youth pastor ever. That didn't sit well with me, but I never liked that guy. I made a joke that he was wife hunting because he was always dating in high school but never married. Turns out, I was not the first to wonder. Apparently my brother and a few others were also suspicious, but obviously didn't think much on it. Seriously, a few months after that, my brother called me to fill me in. It turned out that Jeff was dating the pastor's high school age daughter that was in his youth group. He is 10 years older than she is. They got married and moved to another state where they immediately announced they were expecting. He's not a youth pastor anymore. Okay, everyone, imagine you're talking to a friend, and then they're talking about their friend, and they're like, oh yeah, my buddy, he's in high school, he's looking to date and all that. And you're like, oh cool, good for him, he's in the dating scene finally. And you're like, what grade is your buddy in? And then your friend says, oh, he graduated. This is the half of the video so far, and I hate it. Why are people going to high school to date? when they've graduated, when they're teachers and staff and faculty. Have you not heard of dating apps? Obviously, I know for some cases it's because they're sick in the head or it's a power thing, but just, oh God, it happens so much. Anyway, next story. Story number 58. There was a music teacher who taught me and was a really shifty guy. We would all get wasted in his class and were super obvious about it, but he never once called us out about it. Rather, he was always just sitting with us and made jokes, but was always a wee bit touchy. I was in the school band and he always made jokes about how young everyone is and how we're all pre-puberty and stuff. So obviously everyone talked about it and the rumor mill went crazy. The main rumors were initially quite factual, i.e. he touched kids or was creepy, but a few were like he was genuinely sexually aggressive or SAE, which I never witnessed happen at that stage, which I think is an important distinction. Flash to the end of last year, a bunch of my pals organized a party for everyone to get absolutely diabolically drunk. But someone, I still don't know who, invited the music teacher. He showed up in like one of those armless see-through vests that Big Gay Al wore in South Park with a nipple piercing to boot. Obviously nothing wrong with that, but showing up to what are basically kids in that context is super inappropriate. He got super high off the party supply and started being even further weird, like aggressively grabbing people and crap. A week later, he tried to send nudes to one of my classmates who was still a minor at the time. Story number 59. Ours was that the principal was gay. This was the early 2000s, back when that was hot goss to primary students. His name was also very similar to Dicks in Sun, which didn't help the rumors. He banned cartwheels as well because it might expose girls in dresses or something like that. Anyway, many years later I saw him and he had grown a dirty blonde predator mustache, which I always thought was pretty funny. A few weeks after that, when I was catching up with my dad, he told me that my old principal was on the news. I was like, oh, did you see his predator mustache? And my dad kind of hesitated and was like, yeah, he's been convicted of being a predator. That blew my mind. To a kid, a gay principal with the name Dicks in Sun was the pinnacle of comedy. We had no idea just how true it might have been. And the fact that he grew a mustache just in time to get convicted was even better, unless it was the mustache that tipped off the feds. It's like a bad comedy with the obvious villain that no one seems to notice. Story number 60. There were rumors about an English teacher and a girl 2 grades above me having a relationship. He had recently got divorced, and I took his class as a sophomore while she was a senior. After she graduated, she went to college in Montana, and we learned that he had left his teaching job at our school. I was looking forward to taking his classes the next year, but we were all surprised when he left because he had been there for years, and it was unexpected that he would leave. I heard a rumor that he went to Montana too. Fast forward a few years, and she moves to a city a few hours away from us and transferred colleges. Then a friend of a friend finds the teacher on a high school roster teaching in the same town. At this point, we all believed they were together, no doubt. But wait, then she makes a post on Instagram, which she hasn't been active on for years, of the two of them with a pregnancy announcement. That crap spread like wildfire. We all had the confirmation. She immediately deleted the post after I assume people started talking about it, and he seemed like a good guy and was a cool teacher, but it's so gross how he, a grown adult man in his 40s, could be attracted to his high school student. No thank you. It makes me nervous that he's still working with kids. And I hope the girl is okay. Story number 63. We had this girl who was a freshman my senior year. She was the know-it-all socially awkward nerd that virtually nobody liked. At my school, you had to take PE only during your freshman year. No one ever really showered in the locker rooms unless it was a really hard session. Well, it started to flow out of that freshman class that she took a shower every day. And since it was the last class of the day, she was the reason the bus was always leaving late to take us home. As teenagers, we just started the rumor that she was in there rubbing one out before she had to go home and take care of her 3 siblings until her parents got home. Well, almost done with an entire semester, and this was still happening. The bus driver sent one of my chick friends to go drag this girl out of the showers and to the bus. My friend then eventually came back, got on the bus, whispered something to the driver, and the driver, also a woman, left and eventually came back with this girl holding her head down in what was clearly shame. I then asked my friend what happened, and it turned out that the girl was on the ground, legs spread, propped up against the wall and having the water from the shower head pound away at her. She was really getting off every day. Oh boy, it's always the quiet ones, isn't it, for better or worse? I honestly thought she was gonna walk in on her with one of those dragon, pleasure devices, the really big ones, the ones that make no sense. How do some women do that? I don't know. Anyway, next story. Story number 63. Our principal had really nice taste in clothes and cars, and so there was a rumor that he was running drugs out of his office. Not quite. Turns out he was embezzling from the school to the tune of $250K over the course of like 4 years. Then there was a rumor that the cheer squad were gross pranksters. One involved them saving their used tampons in a jar and smearing the blood on competitors' doors. I don't know if that one was true, but they did make national news by crapping on a pizza and sending it to our rival's cheer team during a cheer competition. And finally, we also had a teacher who was rumored to entertain members of the senior basketball team. It was never confirmed by LE, but she was fired after an investigation into her behavior that revealed that there was some legitimacy to the claims. Story number 63. My senior year, there was a rumor that a kid, I will call him Jake, had a list of names of people that he was going to end their lives. It spread, and eventually a Snapchat picture of him with text saying, "Insert date here and don't come to school," or something similar, started spreading too. I never knew the kid well, but he was an outcast, and people said he gave off school shooter vibes. The day came, I didn't go to school, even though I had a feeling nothing would happen, and neither did most of the school. Jake stayed home, and the police were at his house looking for any sign of weapons or anything. Turns out, it was all a lie. He did have a list, but it was a list of people he was going to talk about to his guidance counselor because they bullied him. He didn't send that Snapchat. It was a picture pulled off of his Facebook or Instagram and given that awful text. As far as I know and remember, there were 2 girls that spread this rumor as a joke, and they didn't face any repercussions. That poor kid was known as School Shooter Jake for the rest of that school year. I still see him occasionally around town, though I never strike up a conversation since we only talked once throughout all of high school. I really hope that rumor hasn't affected his life, and I hope he's doing all right. Story number 64. Not so much a rumor, but the contemporary physics teacher taught one of his senior classes that the Earth was flat, and he was high constantly. Apparently, he was also a real jerk, but he asked a freshman girl if she wanted to smoke pot with him in the faculty parking lot, and she turned him in. He got super fired. Then, an English teacher a couple of years after I graduated got arrested, or maybe just a lawsuit was opened against him for having sexual relations with students in the 90s. It's been a couple of years, but from what I remember, he would favor these students, drive them home, have one-on-one time with them, and send them letters after they graduated. I think he married one. I might be wrong about that. Anyways, his name is Eugene Legg, from a couple of schools in Northern Virginia. I'm not going to say where, but you can look it up and find out. It was an utter crap show that came to light. And I remember a couple of female students coming out and saying that the victims were lying and that he would never do that, etc. Story number 65. One happened to be about me. The popular kid was in my face about a science project in 8th grade, talking about how much mine sucked and literally wanted to clearly fight me. Well, he touched me because he was so all up in my face, so I pushed him out of my face. And he ended up hitting his back on the corner of the table and collapsed onto the ground, talking about how he couldn't feel his legs. EMS got involved, and I got sent to the principal's office, and guess what? Everyone said I'm at fault, so I got suspended and almost expelled. So the rumors went around. 90% of the people that came up to me when I finally got back were told that I pushed him down the stairs for no reason. It actually got so bad that a group of popular girls were all up in my face about it and mad at me. There was a second rumor that he was paralyzed, and I was back from suspension before he felt better to return, but it turns out he was completely fine. I can't tell you how much I had to stick up for myself for months after, which got me in more trouble, all because of complete lies that went around the school. I even lost supposed friends because they assumed I just wanted to hurt them. Story number 66. In middle school, there was a rumor about 2 kids sexting, like super explicitly. People that knew the girl didn't believe it, but then, somehow, pictures and videos were sent to every single 8th grader with a phone. Like, whoever did it literally spent their time trying to get every person's phone number, and they were of her fisting herself. I was at my friend's house with a couple of friends when we all got the messages at the same time. We were shook. Caused a huge thing because then girls were mad that their boys had seen it, and that poor girl got destroyed socially. Saw her a lot several years later when her dad was put in the nursing home I worked at, and she seemed fine, thankfully. Then, in high school, there was a rumor that a kid got expelled because of a picture on his Twitter. Sure enough, the dude took a picture of his wiener in class and got the teacher in the background and posted it. Someone reported it, and yeah, he got expelled. Same year, another kid got expelled for bringing a gun to school and threatening a class. Guess which one was banned from prom and which was allowed to go? Hint, a few parents were concerned prom wasn't safe. Also, that prom, there was a rumor that they were trying to basically pull a Carrie and get a not popular or super well-known girl to win prom queen so they could absolutely humiliate her. They all agreed to vote for her, and and they all voted for a guy that had bullied her a lot over the years and was super ready to humiliate her at prom. Funny thing is, though, this girl's sister and her friend, me, were the ones that made and set up the prom decorations and everything. So they couldn't do crap to physically humiliate her. She won, and she was absolutely delighted and in no way humiliated, and even refused to dance with the prom king, which humiliated him. And also, before his expulsions, there was a rumor that the wiener pick dude was purposefully finding people that lived within driving distance that had an STI and having sex with them to get that STI and spread it around. Well, it wasn't a rumor. He caused a tri-county outbreak of chlamydia, took down the whole football team and most of the cheerleaders in another county. That kid was wild. Story number 67, that some kid hooked up with a girl at a neighboring high school while her parents were out of town. They decided to try anal intercourse, and she made a mess on her parents' new white couch on accident. When her parents came home a few days later, the stain was still visible, and the girl decided to blame it on her dog to avoid obvious embarrassment. The parents said that they had it with the dog and took it behind the shed, and this girl lived in a part of town where that sort of way to put down a dog seemed par for the course. Obviously, the story was very fake. When I went to college, I told a friend of mine that story, and he said there was the exact same rumor where he grew up. We grew up in different time zones. The story always made me so sad. Was relieved to hear it was made up, though, and we found out when we met the girl at a bonfire my senior year of high school. Story number 68. When I was in 8th grade, our assistant principal was promoted as the principal of the nearest high school. A girl moving between the same schools, 8th to 9th grade, at some point confessed to a friend that she was having an affair with this principal. Word spread to authorities that there were, at the very least, text messages to corroborate the story, and the principal fled halfway across the U.S. before being caught. Allegedly, she continued writing to him in prison. 3 years later, this girl is a senior going on our school's annual senior trip. Usually, the district rents out Six Flags for the night. Senior classes from all 4 schools go, sleep nearby overnight, then return in the morning. Word starts to spread around that this girl was part of a foursome. Not sure if the boys-girls ratio was 3-1 or 2-2, but there were at least 2 guys, and that happened overnight on this trip. Then, a video of it starts to spread, and then suddenly, senior trips are no longer overnight. Story number 69. We had a history teacher named Mr. D. Mr. D was pretty weird, but he was married and had 2 kids. His wife, Mrs. D, also taught in our school, just on a different floor, and their kids attended our school. Everyone joked that Mr. D was having an affair with Mrs. C, the history teacher in the room next to his. Most of us just laughed about it because he was married and worked in the same school as his wife. But anyway, it turned out to be 100% true, and they got caught either my junior or senior year. They started to slip up. Students started seeing them kissing during lunch breaks and whatnot. Apparently, his wife caught on and confronted him. He left the house for the night, and while she was out the next day, came back and trashed the house. She got a restraining order, and they ended up with split custody. His kids hate his guts. At first, I didn't believe it, but I was at school after hours for robotics, and there was a basketball game on the other side of the school in the gym. The team, our high school team, was playing, and the same team Mr. D's son was on. I was waiting outside because I was like an hour early for our robotics meeting, just watching all the mildly excited parents walk into the school, and guess who walks up? Mr. D with his girlfriend, Mrs. C, holding hands. I really didn't want to believe it. Up until that point, I had a lot of respect for Mrs. C. And there was also another rumor that a teacher, Mr. M, was racist. We all thought it was a couple of kids making some dumb BS jokes and joined in, but no. He really lost his crap mid-class one day and went off on a racist rant towards a mixed-race student about how his parents should have never gotten together. He got fired for it, but he was already most of the way through his last 2 weeks of teaching at our school, so he really didn't lose anything. Story number 70. Not at my school, but at our rival junior high school. We were the poor school, and they were the rich ones. A group of boys get on a bus to go to a wrestling meet, and one of the boys is not well liked and often gets picked on. On the way back from the meet, the unliked boy falls asleep, and 5 of the boys who don't like him decide to prank him by standing around him while the bus is in motion and self-pleasuring themselves. They all finish together, and the boy wakes up covered in semen with 5 tween wieners in his face. And you're probably thinking, well, that's SA on a bus with adults and a camera. Clearly something happened, right? Well, all 5 boys got in-school suspension, the ringleader getting a full week, but the rest for 2 or 3 days. The loose punishment of the cream team spawned arguments in the school that went all the way up to the school board. The board promised to crack down on future incidents, but would not seek further punishment of the participants. 2 weeks after the school board meeting at the poor junior high, two wrestlers held down a friend while another wrestler farted in his face. The entire wrestling team was disbanded, and all three boys were suspended out of school for 2 weeks, and the entire team was banned from participating in school events for the rest of their school careers. Story number 71. This is not from high school, but when I was in 8th grade, and I feel like I need to share this. There was a rumor that a newly hired teacher at the Catholic K-8 school I went to as a kid was fired from the previous school she worked at for not letting her students use the restroom until they pissed themselves. I'm not quite sure what her reasoning behind it was. Perhaps she thought it was disruptive or a way of skipping, but it surely isn't justifiable. She had denied a class of 6th or 7th graders their right to use the bathroom, and the poor students were pushed to the point of pissing themselves because of her lack of basic respect. She was thankfully fired from that school right after, and as it turns out, this was all true, and our school administrators were aware of it when they hired her. She only lasted at the school a year before being fired again. Okay, guys, so you know how in the news people are like, oh, we need to psychoanalyze and mentally evaluate cops before they enter into service. What if we did the same for teachers? You know, just so they don't traumatize and ruin the lives of the next future generation. Just a crazy idea. Hold up a picture of a minor, put it in their face and say, sir or ma'am, do you find this attractive? And if their answer is anything other than no, you may need to call the police, possibly the FBI, and most definitely God if you seek him in your heart, because oh my God, the answer should not be yes. Anyway, next story. Story number 72. I went to a private school that used to do out-of-state field trips for the high schoolers. One year, we went to New Orleans via train. It was a 12-hour train ride, and most of us killed time on the ride by sleeping, chatting, playing DS, listening to music, whatever. So, we inevitably land in NOLA, and right away, this one kid, we will call Z, is basically shuffled away by the teachers and put into a cab to go to the airport to fly home. When we got back from the trip and Z was no longer attending our school, the rumor quickly spread that he had S8'd a girl while on the train, but the student body was split on whether or not it was true. The other half thought he had been caught with weed in his bag. Well, after I graduated, I found out from a mutual friend that he did indeed whip out his member to a freshman in the back of the train, and she immediately went to one of our teacher chaperones about it. They were not flirtatious in any way before this incident, so the fact that he did it was totally random and unprompted. Another big one was this kid who was flat out a neo-Nazi who threatened to come to my house with a gun and end the life of my mother because she is a lesbian and works in Hollywood, so she's Jew adjacent. Because he was never caught saying it in front of anyone important in the school, he got away saying all sorts of horrible stuff to a multitude of students for almost an entire quarter. Then, one day he was moving to California with his mom to care for his grandma, apparently. The rumor was that he was gooned in the middle of the night and sent to a troubled teen program. That also ended up being true. Afterwards, he had 3 separate self-unaliving attempts after he got out because of the trauma and abuse he incurred during his 2-year stay in the programs. He's no longer an extremist, but he hasn't really recovered. Story number 73. I went to a high school in coastal California, upscale town with a rich suburb with lots of celebrities and famous people. There were 3 big high schools, and I went to one that had a really good theater program. So rumor goes that this theater program had a sub-teacher, a male, who always subbed for the program and had for a very long time. Long story short, the sub-teacher and popular girl in class were close. They were always talking in class. He gave her special treatment and attention, would let her leave class whenever she wanted, that kind of obvious thing. The sub-teacher was also close with her mom. Now the girl starts babysitting for the substitute teacher, who is married by the way, and spending lots of time with him. The sub stopped substitute teaching for some reason, and then we started hearing rumors about the girl sleeping with him. Now to be fair, we had already graduated, I was in the same class as her, when we started hearing that they slept together, but they were spending time together before she graduated. And the funny thing is, we thought the sub was sleeping with her mom, who was also married the whole time, who was actually kind of a really old MILF, so we figured that's what it was. No biggie except adult-aged adultery, but come to find out that the sub and the daughter were banging the whole time. And this girl already had some scandalous stuff happen with her before, so I don't put it past her. Someone said it earlier, those damn theater kids. Story number 74. There was a rumor at my school that this one girl had a crazy party where I had gay sex, someone broke her toilet, and one guy puked outside on her lawn and down her stairs. The truth? The party was supposed to be me, my friend, and the girl. It turned into a party when she invited people that were boring and lame as hell, so my friend and I went downstairs for a while to talk. I tried to pierce her nose, but that's a different story. Then my friend broke her toilet on purpose because the party girl had a habit of getting high/drunk and making us do something we didn't want to, like being stuck at a party, unable to leave because we were too drunk to drive. After that, I puked down her stairs after I drank too much. The next day, she or one of her friends spreads the rumors, and then they added in that my friend and I had gay sex for color, I guess? Anyways, the moral of the story is, just stay home and have gay sex with somebody instead of hanging out with your boring, crappy friend. Sure, she has free weed and booze, but seriously, don't. Story number 75. In high school, there was this really good-looking teacher named Mr. Malik. Everyone used to confuse him with another teacher with the same name, which made me believe the rumor was about the other teacher with the same name. The rumor was that he slept with a student, and that student was actually my old friend's sister. My friend used to cover up for her sister, saying that it never happened. We all thought it was a lie, though he did miss out on a few months of being in school. We all didn't know why specifically, even though we heard about the rumor. We then learned the rumor was actually true and that he had to go to court and handle the situation. I don't think he got in trouble because she was of legal age, 18, and he continued to work in the school even afterwards. Story number 76. The female phys ed teacher would F the graduating male rugby star players after graduation. These were dudes in the junior national program with Division I scholarships for the fall. I grew up in a place where we had grade 13, and often students were not only adults when we graduated, they were legal drinking age. She would have them over during the summer to her place for a night of drinks, sometimes just one player, sometimes she would take on 2 or 3 at a time. Everybody was an adult, so she never lost her job. She had a rockin' body too, kind of a mannish face, but she was built. I never went back to that town this summer after high school, but I was there to party all summer, and I knew 3 dudes who plowed her. Story number 77. I went to middle school with a kid who was very popular. He was being scouted by some of the high schools in his after-school football league to play in their high schools. In South Florida, there are a few high schools where if you play there and excel, you are going D1 in one of those big prestigious colleges that always sends players to the NFL. He was popular with the ladies, was one of the only middle schoolers at the time having sex, smoking weed, being invited to high school parties. 8th grade year, out of nowhere, he disappeared. No one heard from him, and his very quiet, nerdy cousin wouldn't say anything about where he went. After we started high school, the rumors started to come out. He and his adult cousin went on a purse-snatching spree and had attempted to snatch a purse from an old woman. When she fought back, they beat her to within an inch of her life. He was in juvie for the next few years, and his adult cousin got a 40-plus year sentence. The beating and the aftermath were that effing bad. That was not all, though. Rumor had it that this guy had become a girl while he was in juvie. Well, I don't know how true the crime spree story was, but she was in a detention facility for a few years and had come out as trans. The one popular middle school stud had become the laughingstock at our high school. She was getting jumped every day until she dropped out of school. Last I heard, over 10 years ago, she was on Backpage doing sex work. Story number 78. In senior year, we had this new principal. The new principal was very mysterious. They were not from the area, they had moved to town just for the job. There were whispers they were the principal of the high school where Pamela Smart developed a sexual relationship with a student, then had that student murder her husband, and found out later it was true. They left New Hampshire because the tabloid TV shows were prying into their life nonstop. Coming to my school was an escape from the media frenzy. To add to the scandal, there were rumors that the principal quietly married a teacher at my school. They had only saw each other a short time and then got married without telling anyone. That also not only turned out to be true, but it was a teacher I had at the time and really liked. Story number 79. Mrs. Salin was cheating on Senor Salin with the history teacher. How do I know it was true? I went to the bathroom after school hours and heard some people doing something naughty in the stall beside me. After I left, I stood close enough to see who came out but was still hidden. Sure enough, it was Mrs. Salin and the history teacher. I can't remember his name, to be honest, but he was the creepy teacher that the popular girls liked, probably because he was totally creeping on them. Anyways, I told some people in the school play, which Mrs. Salin was the director of, and rumors spread quick. All I now know is that they got divorced. I don't know if Mr. Salin found out, and part of me feels guilty for not telling him. She probably would have gotten fired if I did that, though. She was a good teacher. She worked with the bad students, so I never had her, but I did know her a little through other things, mainly my theater friends. I wasn't in theater, but like all my friends were, so I got to hang around the theater during practice. And I don't know what drove her to cheat, but she definitely messed up. Story number 80. Some decent-looking girl had her friends get her a bit drunk, self-pleasured, and then inserted a banana into her private part. Now, here is where things get weird. They took pictures. No, not taken 5 years ago with a smartphone. It was in the 90s with physical pictures you had to hold in your hand and show someone personally, which means, fortunately for the girl, only a small group of people in her class and some others, had seen the pictures. But many people were talking about it without any proof. Their friend had a friend who had a friend who saw the pictures, for example. So many people were talking about the banana girl, who, by the way, got a bit of depression after that, but it was just essentially a rumor. Nobody had those pictures at the ready on their computer or anything. My girlfriend at the time happened to have seen the pictures herself, so she confirmed it was not just a rumor. Story number 81. The science teacher did drive through the side of the school drunk during a high school basketball game my freshman year. Her behavior during class made more sense. She was always better after the just coffee that she constantly drank, wink wink. Then sophomore year, the female health teacher and volleyball coach was caught having inappropriate relations with the girls on her volleyball team and with popular girls. This explains why all of her lessons were free study and all the girls were constantly at her desk. Then one of the brothers hired to teach gym class somewhere between freshman and sophomore year was also arrested for inappropriate relationships with students. Not the one I would have guessed, they were both married. And finally, I did get pregnant my senior year. From my boyfriend, not school faculty, but thanks to the previous several dozen rumors that began freshman year, due to my ulcers, but apparently was unbelievable because I was so young and I got my first one at 12, no one believed them, and I was able to do what I needed to be in peace with like only 4 people knowing what happened. Ah, good times. Story number 82. I did a double degree and our class needed a new teacher because our old one ended up on a long sick leave. So we get this new teacher and his attitude was that he isn't getting paid double, so he will only take care of the other degree and it's up to us to make sure that we have all of our needed classes on the schedule. Okay, so F you too. There was 42 of us in the beginning, but only me and my friend ended up completing it. About 10 were missing a few classes at the time of the graduation because of him. So we were wondering why he was always so quiet and never seen with the other teachers. He was really arrogant in the classroom. Something seemed off about him. There were so many rumors that it's hard to even remember. He would mostly sit around student lounges, and one time one student was complaining about a teacher that is awful to her and won't help her, and it ended up being our teacher. Well, luck would have it that he was sitting behind her and started to yell at her, etc. He tried to ruin her grades after that and was let go. Nobody missed him. And I graduated and went on to live my life. A few years later, I went to a gay club with my friend group, and guess who I bump into? You guessed it, my lovely old teacher. He was covered in leather and had a spike collar on. I will always remember the look on his face and how he simply ran in the other direction after sheepishly saying hello. I had a few laughs with my friends about it, and I hope that his ego is a little smaller now and he treats his students much better. Story number 83. The director has scammed the school, ran away with the money, and got untraceable, leaving the school about to go bankrupt. This happened on my freshman year, and it was very weird for us to hear the rumors. It was an old man, and he was very kind to the students, but just suddenly disappeared one day, and we assumed he was dismissed. The school is the high school division of a private university, and the board of trustees decided that the director should change every 6 months and come once a week to meet the students. We all thought it was weird. The school started to get worse. There were barely any funds to keep our studies intact. The computers were not able to run all the softwares needed for our afternoon classes. We got an associate's degree alongside our high school diploma, and they claimed they had no money to fix anything in the school. The ceiling was falling, lots of exposed wires, etc. Turns out the situation was the same for the university students as well. Some degrees were cut to save money. Years later, 1/3 of the campus got sold to another high school nearby. Another half of the campus had been rented out to a French coffee shop and language school, and another private university, and more. The rumor was all true. Workers for my period were not getting paid and only wanted to see us graduating well before everything went downhill. It is going down on debt and lawsuits, and we all know that it will probably close down in a few years. What is surprising is that this school was once the most renowned private school of the city, and the tuition is not cheap. Story number 84. There was a girl at my school who was called, for a lack of a better word, a slut. I did not know why there was usually a conversation going on about her, as I kept to my own friend group and stayed out of what would be called the popular news group, so I didn't really believe that she was an S-word because this was high school and rumors and gossip, etc. spread pretty fast and they aren't always true. So, through bits and pieces, I found out that at 13 to 14, not sure which age, she had 2 videos of her leaked. One was of her making out with a boy in front of a crowd in a bedroom. I saw the video and dear God did I need eye bleach. The second, well, was of her self-pleasuring. I avoided this video like the bubonic plague. My regret is not somehow alerting the authorities or a counselor to this, as of course, this was CP content. Whenever I saw her around the school, she was always looking around like a deer in headlights and had an apprehensive kind of face. I never really spoke to her as her dean wasn't the same as mine. Different dean equals no classes together, and I don't know what's happened as I'm just staying to my own business. I definitely don't need to hear any more rumors. Story number 85, that one of the coolest math teachers touched girls inappropriately during class. A few times I saw him touch a girl's shoulder or back, but I thought it was harmless and he was just chill. Then randomly, he was absent from class for like 2 weeks and came back with no explanation. A girl in my class told me that the rumors were true and that she was one of the girls to tell on him because he was stroking her inner thigh when she went to his desk for help during a test. It was his last year before retirement, so he was old and didn't get fired. Another one was that one of the freshman girl basketball coaches was in a lesbian relationship with one of the students. No one believed it until she was caught at a sleepover with the team. And then another was that a science teacher was a creep. That also wasn't believed until he was caught 3 separate times self-pleasuring in public. Story number 86. Some teacher got arrested for noncing in his first year. He was a peculiar sort of teacher, eccentric but in a weirdly funny, jokey way. Rather than weird, not gonna lie, his lessons were actually fun. I thought it was a false alarm, possibly, even because of a very crude image that a mate made in Microsoft Paint in front of one of the promo photos for the school of one of the very adored girls the school over with the fat old bearded IT technician. All we truly knew was police had been in. He was then out. Kids saw lights outside the windows in like third period. And we assumed he wasn't really a nonce, maybe just got in trouble because he let kids run wild and do crap. Like, above that, even unbelievably crappy fake isn't exactly defensible. But apparently it wasn't even that he was totally noncing. I forgot his name to Google him now. Wells or something maybe? Think he got done for it elsewhere. And years later, like even into my solid 20s, someone told me a bit more from a different year. Some kid I didn't know at the time, or someone's brother who knew someone I knew, I don't know. Sure, it was someone I bumped into a pub somewhere. I googled the name, and yeah, the teacher definitely was noncing somewhere. So, fellow viewers, if you want to know what illiterate British trash reads like, it's this story. Absolute rubbish, okay? That's what reading this was. And also, if you don't know what nonce means, which is a word that was used throughout that story, nonce is a term in the UK for a sex offender, someone who likes to creep on kids. So now you know, and now you know what awful grammar looks like across the pond if you live here in the Americas. We're learning so much today, aren't we? Anyway, next story. Story number 87. Another one, because I don't know if they ever actually found out if it was true or not, but there was a lot of heat on him. A girl in my year was banging one of the teachers. She was into older guys a bit, with the weird exception of me once, but I was a fool too romantic and didn't like her like that, and rejected her when we were early friends because I fancied some other girls. But yeah, I don't know if they ever found out whether she was banging the teacher, though it absolutely definitely was happening for ages. She always used to tell me about it. However, I don't know if she thought it would get out via me or just wanted the confidence, but I am an effing solid man of my word. Even as a kid, I never told a soul. I don't think I even told anyone who would know them to date. I have no idea if he knew if I knew, or she told him I knew, but I did find it amusing. His wife taught at the same damn school too. No offense, he wasn't great, but he was still punching a bit IMO, and they had kids together. Also, no offense to my mate, but she wasn't stunningly attractive or anything. She was bloody persistent though. Carried on a bit on and off after school from what I recall, and she sorted herself out when she had a kid by another older guy she was seeing though. Don't judge anyone here though, except maybe the teacher, but my friend was no idiot and not innocent. And I'll say for my mate, whatever any of all of this was, she was always nice and kind to me and happy and up for a laugh. I used to love her a lot, and I still do, to be honest. And it's a shame we grew apart, as time is wont to do. I think she's married to a lady now. Story number 88. Here are two that happened within a few years of each other several years ago. I went to a regional high school that covered 10 towns and had about 600 students. During the school year, a social studies teacher became pregnant. She was probably in her early 30s. She wasn't married, and there were jokes and rumors it was a student. Well, it did end up being a male student 1 year ahead of me who lived in my town. Nothing happened to the teacher, and after graduating, he was would sometimes come by the school with the kid to see her. Then, a female student at my high school was noticeably spending a great deal of time with the male Spanish teacher, early 40s. She would eat lunch in his office alone with him, sit in the back of his classes when she had a study hall, things like that. She was a junior, and this went on until she graduated, at which time he divorced his wife, left his 2 kids, and married her. The wedding pics they posted online look so gross. A gray-haired, paunchy, middle-aged man marrying an 18-year-old girl. The school also did nothing in this instance. We also had a fat old man of a history teacher who was always extra nice to the pretty girls. The girls joked amongst themselves and to other students that if you sat in the front row, wore a short skirt, and opened your legs, you would be guaranteed an A. Icky. Story number 89. Had this butter-faced Latina Spanish teacher. Face 4 out of 10, breasts 11 out of 10, everything else 9 out of 10. Anyway, rumor began that she would let a male student see/touch. Rumor changed and was disputed all the time, but see and touch her breasts. I usually stayed out of the discussion, but I would listen in. If someone included me, I'd participate in talking. This teacher, she was a mouth breather, by the way, and one of my close classmates, I will call him Derek, said it was because she was taking Big D all the time. We all got a big laugh out of that. Then the rumors picked up that she would let that particular student see and touch her breasts in her classroom after asking for help. So I did the only rational thing I could and asked her if she could help me study for the oral exam next week. I went during study hall, and sure enough, she helped me study. I was relieved and disappointed at the same time. I thought that, teenager ego incoming, if she didn't let me have a slice, she wasn't with any student. But then next week, I and another student, I will call Brent, see Derek walking out of the Spanish room with a huge boner. And Brent's like, "Bro, he's been savaging the Spanish teacher." "No way, man." And we argued about it for a moment, so we went to ask him about it. But Brent chickened out. So during study hall, I tell Derek I have something in my car to show him. We go out to the lot, and I ask him point blank. His face and ears turn red. He looks both ways and tells me something even better. The Spanish teacher had a baby the year prior, and she was breastfeeding. She'd go to the daycare at lunch to feed him. It was time to wean him, and had but missed breastfeeding and was so engorged. She said Derek reminds her of her baby and let him suck her rack. Then I asked him about the Big D joke, and he said that to her, it's not even sexual. But of course, to this 17-year-old, it definitely was. He told me not to tell anyone, and I didn't. I kept my word, and eventually the rumor died down a bit, and Derek didn't tell any more jokes. I had the conflict of glad I'm not in Derek's situation and fantasizing about being in Derek's situation. It's been about 6 years and she still teaches there. Derek lives far away, and I don't know how to end this post. Story number 90. There was an elaborate drug ring amongst the popular rich kids dealing pills, weed, and cocaine. Turns out it was true, but only the pills which they were stealing from their parents. Basically, every adult in my hometown is medicated on something. Like 8 kids got busted and sent away for a year. They all came back and everyone made fun of them constantly for it. They'd always been a-holes, so it was pretty funny. There was also a rumor that one of my classmates' mom, who was a substitute teacher, was taking high school boys out to the woods to have sex with. One of the guys bragged about it to her son in front of everyone one day, and the son kicked his ass. One of the most savage beatdowns I've ever seen, and their family imploded after that. The dad took him and his siblings and moved to Wisconsin like a week after the fight, while the mother ended up going to prison. Story number 91. This isn't a rumor, but more like a shocking fact. When I was in high school, sophomore to junior year, there was this professor, Mr. Marshall. He was a history teacher in his late 20s and had a hilarious yet serious personality. He was friends with all of the staff. He was an amazing teacher and wasn't bad looking. He was the kind of professor you'd look up to because of how he cared for his students. Needless to say, almost every girl that knew him liked him or had some kind of crush on him. And it was a running joke that if he wanted, he could get with any girl in his class. The jokes soon ended though once he moved countries to teach in Europe though. Then on my senior year, after he moved, he started following all of his former female students who were all seniors and were nearly 18 or were 18 already, and he started DMing some of them. One day, he DM'd a really popular girl with a bunch of followers and she put him on blast, and then a bunch of girls saw it and they started to share their creepy DMs from Mr. Marshall, and suddenly you had a whole hashtag #MeToo against this one particular dude. The school put out a public statement, and all the teachers that were this guy's friend put their statements on their Instagram pages, etc. I think they even notified the school he was teaching at. I don't know, but that was something that happened. Big sad that he was a creep. And I thought he was a good teacher, not gonna lie. But I guess this was just one of those lessons that you truly don't know people, even if you think you do. Story number 92. Around junior year, a transfer from New York had just joined our class. Everyone, including myself, thought he was an undercover cop. Now, to our point, he did look a tad bit older and more developed than the rest of us. He started showing up to parties and created some 21 Jump Street type situations and made everyone nervous whenever he showed up. One time, he showed up to the wrong party. It was a real rager, and a bunch of kids from other schools were there. Some of the thuggish kids got word of the possibility of a UC being there, undercover cop, so they went to call him out on it. The whole thing was a big scene. It led to them putting a blunt in his face and asking him to smoke it to prove he wasn't a cop. He wanted to refuse, but knew it meant consequences with the level of faded everyone was on. So, he smoked it and everyone rejoiced. I guess Korean Jesus was watching over us that day, and at the end of the school year, he disappeared and never returned. No one knows why, but the mystery still lives on to this day. Story number 93. Marching band kids giving BJs in the back of a bus coming home one night from a weekend competition. Except it wasn't really a rumor. Sometimes the story would be exaggerated to include full-on sex, but the kids that were involved were smarter than to make it too explicit. We'd just won high scores in our competition that night, and a few of the students were celebrating in the back. The chaperones and instructors in the front of the bus were either oblivious to what was going on, it was dark and the bus was not quiet, or they only cared enough to demand any shenanigans stop if they suspected something. I was sitting towards the front of the bus with my own group of buddies, but we knew what was going on. Needless to say, our school's marching band got a bit of a reputation as a result of the rumors that were spreading, and an administrative investigation was conducted that eventually concluded that some students would just receive suspensions. Fortunately, no adults were ever involved. Well, folks, isn't that nice that the final story involved sex scandals with no adults, just the high schoolers saying, hey, adults, stay out of this, let us do our stupid dumb things, no grooming here, we're taking it back. Props off to you, high schoolers. Not really. But again, I mean, at least there were no adults involved, but I suppose given all the stories here, we could maybe take that as a win. Also, whenever possible, I like to include my own relevant stories to these videos. I know I said earlier I didn't have one, but I was actually reminded throughout this video that an old principal of mine in middle school turned out to be a nonce himself, a little old kid diddler. But I transferred out of that school the year it happened. It was 1 through 12, so I wasn't there for the aftermath, but I'm reminded that I too had the experience of having a principal or a faculty member who was a diddler, so that's great. And also, I was friends with his son too, so I wasn't particularly close to the guy, so I didn't message him and be like, hey, give me the details about your dad going to jail or anything like that. But anyway, guys, we are at the end of the video. Thank you so much for watching. Have a really good day, and bye-bye!